The first time I met Ella Thorne, I was standing on the breakwater of Santa Barbara Pier, clutching half a glass of leftover bourbon. The Pacific wind carried a salty tang across the coast, pressing her flaxen hair against her neck. The luster of those strands, the curl of the baby hairs behind her ears, were identical to Lillian's. A name I thought had been smoothed by 3 years of time suddenly turned sharp, stealing my breath and leaving a tight, burning ache in my chest that even the bourbon's sting couldn't dull. Lillian's hair had been that same flaxen shade, glowing with faint golden undertones in sunlight. She'd always used a simple silver hairpin to secure the strands behind her ears, and when she bowed her head, the tips would brush softly against her collarbone exactly as Ella looked in that moment, so similar it left me dizzy. What shattered me most was her profile. Beneath a straight nose, the fullness of her lips and the curve of her lip line, even the faint dimple at the corner of her right eye when she smiled, were Lillian's to a T. Ella was bending down to feed a lame seagull, and sunlight filtered through her slender fingers, casting dappled light on the sand. Those hands, with their defined knuckles and neatly trimmed nails, even the callus on the inside of her index finger from years of holding a brush, were identical to Lillian's. I remembered how Lillian had stretched out her hand that day in the Napa Valley vineyard, her fingertips brushing the Chardonnay grapevines as she taught me to identify ripe fruit, sunlight slipping through her fingers to warm the back of my hand. It was late autumn 3 years ago when Lillian left me in a car accident in Monterey. We'd been together for 7 years, our love simmering like a slow-cooked stew, growing richer with time, from our first meeting in Stanford's library to our small apartment in San Francisco. We'd met at a botany seminar. She'd been carrying a stack of rare flower encyclopedias and accidentally knocked the papers from my hands. Amid the scattered pages was a sketch I'd drawn of Lisianthus, her favorite flower. As she knelt to pick them up, the dimple at her eye danced with her smile. "You like Lisianthus too," she'd said. Later, we'd often date at the university's botanical garden. She'd point to the tropical orchids in the greenhouse, her eyes lighting up, and talk about buying a small farm in Napa Valley someday, filling it with white and purple Lisianthus, building a glass conservatory where flowers could bloom even in winter. We'd even found the perfect plot, near Santa Ynez Valley with a stream running through it. She'd planned to write plant observation journals there in retirement, while I tended the vineyard and made Chardonnay that belonged only to us. The details of the accident day are still nailed in my memory like rusted nails. It had been her birthday. I was supposed to finish my meeting in San Francisco early, drive to Monterey to pick her up, and head to our farm plot for a picnic. But a last-minute project presentation dragged on for 2 hours. When I finally burst out of the office building, a news alert popped up on my phone like an ice pick through my heart. Multiple car crash on Monterey's coastal highway, one white sedan submerged in the ocean, owner matching Lillian's information. I drove to Monterey like a man possessed, the scenery blurring into a haze as her morning voice message replayed in my head, warm with laughter. "Caleb, I found a beautiful seashell by the beach. Can't wait to show you when you get here." When I reached the accident scene, police tape cordoned off the coastline, and car debris floated on the sea. I broke free from the officer's grasp, stumbling toward the water until the cold waves lapped at my ankles, the salt burning my throat as I gasped for air. I shouted her name until my voice turned raw and cracked, until my throat bled. Later, when the police recovered the car, they found the seashell wrapped in cotton in the glove compartment, along with a half-finished plant journal. The last entry was dated her birthday, her handwriting messy but warm. "Caleb's coming to take me to see the farm today. Hope he drives safely. Bought Lisianthus seeds, they'll bloom next spring." Those days were hell. Our San Francisco apartment was filled with her traces, the well-worn denim jacket she loved to drape over my arm, hanging in the closet, the plant encyclopedia on the desk, with her little sketches in the margins, the photo of our farm plot taped to the fridge, next to a note she'd written, "Don't forget organic fertilizer." I locked myself in the apartment, refusing to eat or drink, until the neighbors called the police. When they pried the door open, I was curled on the floor clutching her denim jacket, the faint scent of her favorite gardenia perfume, crisp and gentle, fading away. I sold the apartment, sold the farm plot, and moved to Santa Barbara's coast, thinking the Pacific wind might blow away the memories. But every crash of the waves sounded like her sigh, echoing through my nights. "Are you okay?" Ella's voice, warm with that distinct California softness, washed over me like waves against rocks, pulling me out of the memory swamp. I jolted back to reality, realizing I'd been staring at her for too long, my knuckles white around the bourbon glass as ice clinked against the sides, a silent reminder that the woman in front of me wasn't Lillian. "Sorry," I said, tearing my gaze toward the white lighthouse in the distance, my Adam's apple bobbing. "You look a lot like someone I used to know." She raised an eyebrow, that devastating dimple appearing at the corner of her mouth. "Is that the new pickup line? I'm Ella. I work at the gallery downtown." "Caleb." I held out my hand, and the moment our fingertips touched, an electric current surged through me. Her hand was warm, smelling of turpentine, nothing like the faint gardenia scent that had always clung to Lillian. But the shape of her hand, even the curve of her trimmed nails, overlapped with the memory of Lillian's. I could barely resist reaching up to brush the baby hairs behind her ear, to confirm if that dimple trembled when she smiled, just like Lillian's. Over the next 3 months, I became a regular at the gallery. Ella specialized in modern oil paintings, and her own works lined the walls, swathes of indigo and orange blending like California sunsets colliding with night skies. I knew nothing about art, but I found excuses to linger, watching the graceful curve of her neck as she adjusted frames, listening to her talk about color with visitors, the light in her eyes reminding me of Lillian's excitement when she discovered a rare flower. I started asking Ella out. We went wine tasting in Santa Ynez Valley, where she could rattle off tannin levels with sparkling eyes. We watched sunrises in Malibu, where she'd kick off her shoes and run barefoot in the wet sand, laughing like a child. We saw black and white movies at an old theater in Los Angeles, where she'd wipe tears from her eyes discreetly before smiling sheepishly at me. In every moment, I saw Lillian's shadow. The way her brows furrowed when she thought, the way she swirled red wine in her glass to create legs, the way she'd instinctively take the hand of the person next to her when crossing the street, even the pressure of her fingertips was identical to Lillian's. I drowned in the comfort of those similarities, clinging to Ella like a drowning man to a lifebuoy. I even deliberately guided her toward Lillian's favorites, taking her to Lillian's beloved French restaurant, ordering her favorite pan-seared foie gras, buying her Lillian's favorite white roses, watching her hold them as if Lillian were still there, dragging her to Lillian's favorite old movies, listening to her exclaim in the same soft tone. I knew I was being selfish, using Ella as a replacement for Lillian, but the pain of losing Lillian was a tidal wave, and Ella was the only thing I could grasp. Ella seemed to sense something was off. One night, as we walked along the beach, she stopped suddenly and looked me straight in the eyes. "Caleb, you don't love me, do you?" The waves crashed against the shore, a deep, muffled sound like the sob trapped in my chest. I opened my mouth, but no words came. In the moonlight, her face looked pale and fragile, that familiar dimple gone, replaced by deep weariness. Her eyes were narrow, filled with disappointment, and it hit me suddenly, while they looked alike, Lillian's eyes had been rounder, with a hint of a fang showing when she smiled. Ella had no such fang. "You're always looking at me, but it's like you're seeing someone else through me," her voice trembled slightly. "The white roses you buy me, I'm actually allergic to pollen. That French restaurant you love, I hate the greasiness of foie gras. Those old movies you insist on watching, they're too slow, I'm bored out of my mind. None of these things are for me. They're for her, aren't they?" I fell silent, my heart squeezed in an invisible fist, pain searing through me. I knew I was being cruel, reducing a living, breathing woman to a vessel for my memories, but I couldn't stop myself. "Who is she?" Ella whispered. "Lillian. My fiancée." I finally spoke, my voice hoarse and unrecognizable. "She died 3 years ago. Car accident." For the first time, I told someone the whole story, our meeting at Stanford, our plans for the farm, the details of the accident day, the way I'd searched frantically for her at the crash site, the nights I'd cried into her clothes in the dark. I told her about Lillian's kindness, her love for plants, the dimple at her eye, the 7 years we'd shared, all the happy moments, the regrets, the things we'd never get to do. Ella listened quietly, never interrupting. The wind blew her hair across her face, and she brushed it away, her eyes glistening with tears. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I know what it's like to lose someone you love. But Caleb, you can't live in the past forever. She would have wanted you to be happy, not clinging to memories." "I thought being with you was happiness," I said softly, my voice tinged with despair. No, Ella shook her head gently. You love the memory of her. But I'm Ella, I'm not anyone's replacement. I have my own likes, bright colors, dark chocolate, modern art. I'm scared of thunder, I always forget my keys, none of this is like her. What you need isn't me. It's to make peace with the past. That night, Ella didn't let me walk her home. She walked into the darkness alone, her figure thin and resolute. I stood on the beach until dawn, the waves echoing in my ears like Lillian's favorite lullaby, like the sigh of disappointment in Ella's voice as she left. For the next month, I didn't contact Ella. I locked myself in my apartment, flipping through photos of Lillian one by one. In the pictures, Lillian smiled brightly, her eyes clear and bright, strikingly similar to Ella. But looking closely, the differences emerged. Lillian had loved plain clothes, while Ella's closet was filled with vibrant colors. Lillian had been quiet and introverted, while Ella was outgoing, curious about everything. Lillian had smelled of gardenias, Ella of turpentine. I realized I'd been blinded by that familiar face, ignoring Ella's own light. She had her own thoughts, her own passions, her own soul. She was the artist who could talk for hours about a painting, the kind-hearted girl who fed lame seagulls, the sentimental woman who cried at movies. She wasn't Lillian's shadow. She was Ella, one of a kind. And I'd been forcing her to fit Lillian's mold, showing her no respect at all. I tried to climb out of the shadow of the past. I sorted through Lillian's photos, tucking them away in a drawer, not forgetting her, but learning to let go. I went back to the gallery, not to hunt for traces of Lillian, but to apologize to Ella. She'd lost weight, there was a distance in her eyes as she nodded politely when she saw me. Can we talk? I asked, summoning my courage. She hesitated for a moment before nodding. We sat on the couch in the corner of the gallery, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, gilding the tips of her hair. I'm sorry, Ella, I said sincerely. I know I was selfish before, using you as a replacement. I ignored your feelings, didn't respect how unique you are. I'm sorry for what I did. She said nothing, just looked at me quietly. Lillian was the most important person in my life, and I'll never forget her, I continued. But I see now you and she are completely different. I was drawn to your similar faces, but as we spent time together, I gradually saw your light, your love for art, your kindness, your vibrancy, your little quirks. All of it is one of a kind. I confused memory with reality, mistaking my affection for you for obsession with Lillian. It wasn't fair to you. Ella's eyes reddened. She looked down, her long eyelashes casting shadows on her cheeks. Caleb, I believe you're being sincere now, she said, lifting her head, tears glistening in her eyes as that familiar dimple reappeared. But the hurt is already done. I need someone who loves me, not someone still living in the past. I can't give you a second chance. I'm sorry. My heart sank, but I wasn't surprised, only overwhelmed with guilt. I understand, I said. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just hope you can accept my apology. She nodded gently, a relieved smile tugging at her lips. Actually, during the time we spent together, I felt your kindness. I understand the pain of losing someone you love. If you want, I'd like us to be friends. In the months that followed, we truly became good friends. I'd bring sunflowers, her favorite, not white roses, to her gallery openings. When I was feeling low, she'd drag me to see her new paintings, explaining the stories behind the colors. We'd get coffee at a little cafe in Santa Barbara, her teasing me for not understanding art, me laughing at her terrible sense of numbers. On thunderstorm nights, she'd call me, her voice shaking, and I'd tell her jokes until she stopped being scared. I no longer searched for similarities between her and Lillian. Instead, I cherished Ella for who she was. I learned she liked to eat a piece of dark chocolate when she was tired of painting, cocoa powder dusting her lips, that she curled up on the couch with a pillow during thunderstorms, that she was terrible with numbers and always forgot her keys, relying on me to keep a spare, that despite her outgoing exterior, she was soft-hearted, tears coming easily when she saw stray animals. These little habits, her true self, made me realize that love isn't about finding a replacement, it's about appreciating and cherishing someone for who they are. 6 months later, I asked Ella to watch the sunset with me on a hilltop in Santa Barbara. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, with city lights twinkling in the distance. I pulled a small box from my pocket and opened it, revealing a silver necklace with a tiny paintbrush pendant. "This isn't a confession," I said, looking into her eyes. "I just want to thank you. Thank you for teaching me that loss isn't the end, that letting go of obsession isn't betrayal, it's carrying memories forward. Lillian taught me how to love, but you taught me how to respect love, how to make peace with the past." Ella took the necklace, her eyes smiling as that familiar dimple reappeared. "Thank you, Caleb," she said. "I'm glad I met you too. I'm glad we're friends." I fastened the necklace around her neck, and sunlight warmed us both, a calm settling over me. In that moment, I knew I'd finally stepped out of the darkness. Lillian would always be a precious memory, her love a light that had illuminated my past. But Ella was a gift. She'd shown me that even after devastating loss, I was still worthy of happiness, still capable of appreciating and cherishing the people around me. The California wind still blows along the coast, but this time, I no longer drown in the echoes of the past. I've learned that love isn't about recreating memories, it's about respecting the uniqueness of every individual. Letting go isn't forgetting, it's carrying the blessings of those we've lost and living fully in the present. My friendship with Ella is like a clear mountain spring, pure and enduring. It's taught me that the most precious thing in life isn't clinging to the past, but cherishing every sincere, beautiful moment right in front of me. And those old wounds? They've become badges of growth, teaching me how to love better, how to live better.